Welcome to the Liberty Show, where we talk about American classical education and invite you to join our efforts to improve the moral and intellectual virtue of the next generation. I'm Matthew Kirby. I'm the CEO of Liberty Classical Schools, where our mission is to improve the hearts and minds of students in K-12 American classical charter schools that emphasize virtuous living, traditional learning, and civic responsibility. If you'd like to learn more about us, I encourage you to read libertyclassicalschools.org. I want to introduce my guest today is Dr. Wilfred McClay. He is an acclaimed historian. He is the author of the widely praised Land of Hope, which is the American history narrative that we use in our schools. I would certainly commend it to you. Dr. McClay is the Victor Davis Hanson Chair in Classical History and Western Civilization at Hillsdale College. He earned his undergraduate degree from St. John's College, which is directly across the street from my alma mater, the Naval Academy, by the way, and he earned his PhD from Johns Hopkins. He's taught at a number of universities, including the University of Oklahoma, Georgetown, Tulane, Johns Hopkins, the University of Dallas, and the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. Dr. McClay is a member of the U.S. Commission on the Semi-Quincentennial, which has been charged with planning the celebration of our nation's 250th birthday, which will occur later this year and summer. Know that you're going to enjoy this interview between Dr. McClay and I. Thanks for joining us. So we started our partnership with Hillsdale back in about 2012, 2013, before we opened our first school in 2014. And at that time, the Barney Charter School Initiative was about 1.5 people. There was not really a full-time staff like there is.
Phil Kilgore.
Knew Phil very well, and Dr. Moore, and at that time, sort of the technological production of the college was pretty minimal. And since that time, it just exploded, and much to the college's benefit, I think.
I think they're the benefit, if I may say, of the world.
Of the world, I would agree.
We are. I mean, one way the course that I did, the online course, which I think they named it the American Story, or at one point, the first year out, I probably shouldn't say these numbers because they may not be right, but I remember being told that we had 160,000 people who had completed the course, which it's easy to get big numbers for people to start.
Right.
But to complete a 26, or I remember for how many episodes it has, that's really something. And I think it's a testament to the degree to which the production crew made it interesting. We've just got great people. And there's some of them that are homegrown, some of them that Larry Arnn recruited. And the Distant Moon is a production company that we hire, but we feel like they're a part of the organization. They are so they're not mission adjacent, they're mission synonymous.
Yes,
with us. So
well, it feels right, and I mean, I've told you've just met our production team here, and we're watching Hillsdale closely and doing our best to kind of take the best of the people and the stories and the content around here and emulate them to the degree we can with our very finite resources. So we're doing our best.
Yeah.
But this whole movement really lends itself to great storytelling, and so we're trying to do that too.
It does. I think one of the things that we obviously we're trying to bring in on the faculty. I mean, we already have a really wonderful faculty, and they're primarily devoted to teaching. And sometimes I won't name any names, but we've brought in some people who are kind of stars in the academic world. They don't necessarily. One of the differences of us is that we are not. How do I put it? In most aspirant colleges, the sort of directionality is towards the graduate experience, towards research, towards that sort of thing. At Hillsdale, it's the other direction.
Right.
We want to improve teaching. We want to improve, and we want to wrest it out of the hands of the professional educators who have made such a mess of it. At least I would express it that way. I don't know that would be a mission statement, but I think classical education in general is about sort of saying, we've tried various progressive approaches. They're clearly not working. The data all shout at us that it's not working.
That's right.
So as my colleague Dan Copeland has written a short book called Tried and True.
That's right.
What a wonderful title.
It is.
It is. So that's kind of what we're doing. I think I've just come from the Hoagland conference with teachers, and it's very lively. And
maybe explain what is that?
Well, it's something that the college, the Hillsdale College, has organized, and I don't know how long they've been doing it. I've only been at Hillsdale for 5 years, but I participated in it most years that I've been there. And it's teachers who are in Hillsdale-affiliated schools, and there are various kinds of affiliations that a school can have. They can be, all in for Hillsdale. They can be, they can have a more attenuated affiliation status, but they're definitely part of our network. And so we've had hundreds of teachers. It's smaller this year because we have what I hope will be a distant memory by the time people listen to this. Terrible weather in the American East, Southeast, Northeast, all over. So our attendance was down. But these are very lively, very committed teachers in the network. And one of the things is more in side conversations than in my formal remarks that we were talking about is how we really ought to distinguish in thinking about classical education between the content that we want to be sure is at the core of what we do and the conveying of it, and this time-honored traditional ways of conveying that. It may not be that we have to go back to, although I want to do it in some ways, rote memorization. I think memorization is a great thing that we should do more of. I make my students at Hillsdale memorize the Gettysburg Address and the preamble to the Constitution, things like that. Because when you have it memorized, it's in your heart. But on the other hand, I think we have lively people who have different ways of thinking about how do you get young people, particularly these kids now who just don't read anything.
Yeah.
Or they will defiantly say, I don't read out of books.
That's right.
And we don't get this at the college, but the teachers I was talking with today do get that. And some of the people who are going to be watching this get that. And how do you reverse that anti-bibliophilic mentality? We should be bibliophiles. We should have a love of books and not of tablets. I wrote Land of Hope in the hope that it would be something that kids would hang on to, that would be part of a personal library. And it reads that way. I think it will be that kind of book.
Thank you.
It's
I hope
incredibly
well
done. But they have to want to have
a copy for those that. This is Dr. McClay's book, most recent book. He's written dozens, but
we are working on a second edition. By the way, it's going to be
that.
Really.
What are the substantive improvements?
Mainly more images, more maps, more study aids, things that teachers have been telling us they need. The text isn't that different. I've updated it a bit. I've improved some areas where I think it was a little bit weak.
It's a page turner. I mean, it really is. I mean, I just would commend our audience to it because, it's a narrative, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about why you thought it was necessary. What is new and different about it?
I would love to do that, but I just the reason I brought it up is that I think there's a whole lot we need to do to convince young people to read in the first place and to read books. That there's something about the form of a book that it's not a fetish that we just can't let go of because we're baby boomers or whatever. There is something about the book and about the process of reading a book, not reading a screen. It's as you know, all the studies indicate that reading comprehension is better when young people read from books as opposed to screens. And I know that in my own experience. I have to print things out if I really want to understand them.
I spoke recently to a gentleman named Shiloh Brooks, who's
I know Shiloh.
You know Shiloh?
Yes, he does the old school thing for Free Press.
That's
yes.
right. That's right.
Yes.
Well, and he used to be at Princeton, which is considered an Ivy League school, and he lamented that he feels like their students often arrive having never read a complete book to start to finish.
Yeah.
It's a little bit shocking.
I believe he's moved on from Princeton now.
He is now at SMU.
Yes, the George Bush Center.
But he's at the George Bush Center there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe say a little bit more about the tone, the purpose of the book. Why did we need another narrative of American history? What's unique about it?
Well, I'll go back to, Aristotle, of course, distinguishes between efficient causes and final causes. And let me tell you a little bit of the efficient cause part of it, because this isn't widely known. And it really started, I was being a typical university professor, going about my business, teaching my courses, writing articles and books read by, the articles read by, 3 or 4 people. I mean, I'm only slightly exaggerating. And along comes the College Board, which, as you know, is the organization that is in charge of advanced placement testing. They have a monopoly, a completely unjust monopoly, I would add, which is about to be shattered. There's some developments on the horizon. But they decided to revise their USAP course and to revise the framework for it. And, sorry about that.
That's all right.
They wanted to revise the framework and de-emphasize things like the founding, the American Revolution, the Constitutional Convention, the ratification debates, the Bill of Rights, and the personages involved in these things, such as, these marginal characters like a guy named George Washington and Madison. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an astonishing heist that they, in retrospect, I think I didn't grasp the enormity of what was being done. But it was brought to my attention because I didn't follow what the College Board was doing. I was up in my little rarefied university professor atmosphere, and when I realized what was going on, I thought, well, I've got to speak out about this. I got to do something, and I got involved with a group that was decided what we should do is write an open letter to the College Board. Protesting against these changes, doing so in a civil and constructive voice, but firm. That this shall not stand. You really need to go back to your earlier standards. Yeah. And we got about 200 signatures to the letter, very notable people, even a few people in the historical profession, who probably approved of what the College Board had done, but sort of recognized the way they'd done it was not the right way. Anyway, the College Board never acknowledged the letter, but they did revert to the earlier framework. Trouble is that in the intervening months, the major textbook publishers like Prentice Hall and Pearson and McGraw-Hill, and I forget the other one, but it's really, the textbook publishing is dominated by 3 or 4 firms, and they'd all changed their content of their textbooks to accord with what the College Board had done. And by the way, they also, I discovered, and I had not known, that Pearson especially was moving at warp speed towards offering everything online. That was their goal. And there are reasons why this was very attractive to schools, because they could pay a single licensing fee that would allow their students to download what they needed on their tablets. You could revise it, shades of George Orwell. You could revise
inexpensively.
Inexpensively. No one would know the difference. it is really like something out of 1984. But they wanted to, and this is still their objective, is to commit schools to a digital only experience. So anyway, people started coming to me and saying, we should really we need another textbook. We need a competitive textbook. And I'd say, I absolutely, I agree with you. I hope you find somebody to do it. I did not want to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
But I will say Roger Kimball, who is the publisher of Encounter Books and the editor of the New Criterion and a major intellectual figure in American life, came to me. And I think it took him about 5 or 6 times, runs at me, to talk me into it. And I'm so grateful. I'll forever be grateful to him, because it was like what it became was a labor of love. It's as if he introduced me to a great love. And that was presenting the American past with all of its faults, warts and all, but giving a complete picture that could make Americans proud of their past, to make them identify, to be inspired to do better by that past, and in general to help them take aboard the idea of membership in this society, because that's if you're going to have a Republican form of government, you have to have educated, loyal citizens who know their system and love their country.
I love it.
And if we're not going to have that, and I don't know why it took me so long to see this, but I saw it in stark reality. Maybe it's because I wasn't dealing with high school much in my professional life, but that this is of critical importance. And I was noticing, particularly at Tulane, which is a very secular school, and a lot of kids very jaundiced in their view of American history, and that there was something wrong on the K-12 level that was not going to be repaired by instituting required courses in colleges and universities. I'm all for that, and I'm actually involved in some movements to do exactly that, to persuade states, and we've done it, and we managed it in some states, North Carolina, Utah. We're making progress in that, but that's not enough. It has to start earlier.
Right.
And so that's when I was talked into doing the book, and it took me an entire summer to write the first chapter, which is, if people have the book or they look at it, it's very short. And all I can say is that it took me that long to figure out what voice I should have. And it was just endless writing, rewriting of fairly simple things. One of the things I discovered, and this is almost the kind of thing I'd want to put in my gravestone, but it's that simplicity is the hardest thing of all.
Yes. Yes.
It is the beauty of a wise and commodious simplicity is, it's that Shaker hymn, 'tis the gift to be simple. And it's a gift. But there's a hard-won simplicity in the way the book opens that has been, even people who don't read the whole thing, they read the opening and they say, boy, this changes the whole way I view history.
It does strike you as different right away.
And that took me a whole summer to get to that. And I'm very frustrated. The clock was ticking. I'd already agreed to do this. And come October, Roger said, well, we just had a marketing meeting and we have a great plan. Only thing is we don't have a book. And I said, Roger, bear with me. I'm going to need a little while longer. But I was in a mad rush after that because I knew then how to do it. It took me forever to figure it out. But once I kind of got the formula in my bones, I did. And something else I want to mention along the way, that even the book was done and had just come out. I had dinner with a wonderful man named Harry Ballin, who is a lawyer, among many other things he's done in his life. He has a PhD in musicology from Yale and can talk your ear off about musical theory and why the Tristan chord in Wagner is really a product of earlier things and so on. But he's a brilliant man. But he's also a deeply religious Orthodox Jew, and he said to me at one point at a dinner, we closed down the restaurant at the Jefferson Hotel in Washington. It must have been at dinner for almost 5 hours, and he looked at me at one point very intently and said, I believe that if you teach children, if you teach young people that they live under a regime that is bad, it damages their souls. Mm-hmm. Now you're nodding. Yeah, of course. I mean, and that's it. I had never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had never thought about, and I started asking friends who, most of my friends in the profession are much more critical of America and American history and American heroes than I am. And I asked, and I'd always done this actually, I'd ask, do you ever worry that your revisionist view of George Washington, that he really was a brutal man, a brutal slave holder, that's the most important thing to be known about it. Do you ever worry that this has sort of follow-on effects and is damaging to the life prospects of the people you're teaching? And they invariably, I would get the same answer. And I wonder if you can guess what it would be. I'll tell you. I won't make you guess. The answer is, that's not my job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't. I mean, it's if you worked in education at all, that people I don't take responsibility for teaching Foucault to my classes. And it struck me that, and I was very thankful that I could look at what I had done, and that whether I had not been aware of it, but I'd taken that in some way into account, and now I do much more. I think I just finished giving this talk at the Hoogland program and saying, look, history is a part, properly taught, it should be an act of moral formation. And, a lot of times we have a problem with that. History is rightly and wrongly. Rightly in a way, because we shouldn't teach history as a morality play. We should deal with the fact that, the salvation of man is not inside history. I don't think that's a widely disputed view among Christians and Jews and people who have biblical faiths. That history is connected because the biblical God is a God who takes an interest in time, in history, and in the movements of even the doings of nations. He clearly not uninterested in these things. Yeah. But his ways are not ours. We don't know what exactly he has in mind for us. But at any rate, the study of history as a work of memory and of appreciation of those that came before us is soul forming. Yeah. And Burke said, I'll get the quote wrong, but it's something that no one can be expected to look forward to his progeny in the future if he doesn't look backward to his forebears. That this looking backward and looking forward are all part of the same thing, same apprehension of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
And Burke, he talks about the eternal contract of human society, that we are bound together, not just in relationship of the ones who are alive at the time we're alive, but we have a relationship to those who came before us, and we have a relationship to those yet to be born. Now, all of that is going on at the same time in us.
And one of the most human things we can do is hold multiple thoughts in our head at once and appreciate what we get and what we derive, while also being critical of things that weren't so great of a time and place.
Yes, and history has I think more than other disciplines, even let's say anthropology, it has this ability to help us not only escape from the hold of the past, which is what a lot of my colleagues think history is for, is to show, well, the notion the past should have a hold on us is wrong. Like Stephen Dedalus says, history is a nightmare from which I'm trying to escape. That history is not only for that, but it's to help us escape from the present, the stranglehold of the present, the
right,
this
here and the now.
This endless flow of data, of things that we to click on, things that give us a little
the noise.
I can't even remember the name of the hormone that we're supposed to get.
The dopamine.
Dopamine.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you. The dopamine thing. It frees us from dopamine addiction. Put it, if you want to put it in a materialist way, but it opens us up to the sense of time, sort of lying before us as a banquet of things to understand, and the different ways that people have gone about the business of being human.
Yeah.
Just today, just before this interview, I was a little late getting over here because I had trouble getting a cab and ended up with this cab driver from Eritrea. And he went on to lecture me about, in a nice way, about the difference between American dogs and African dogs, and any number of other things about, and shrewd insights about America, thrown in with some other cockamamie things. But I thought to myself, it was such a gift to have this cab ride with this man who is very entertaining, but also gives me a glimpse of the different world he came from. And he's got an Eritrean flag and an American flag. And I said, did you go back? He says, no. Why would I go back from here? Why would I go backwards?
Right.
So it was very inspiring. So I think history does have that. It introduces us to. This is one reason why people complain about social history. I don't because I think it's been a good thing to help us to understand better, particularly the lives of those who are not eminent, who are the servants, the enslaved people of the past, the sort of marginalized, oppressed, etc. I think as long as you don't say that people, by virtue of having these things, are more virtuous somehow than the rest of us, or they're to be lionized for that, but just to try to understand their lives. To expand the range of our human sympathies, and history can do that. Everything from the king and queen, as in Camelot, saying, what do the simple folk do? All the way down to the simple folk themselves, saying, what do those people in the castle do? I think history helps to address some of that appetite for knowing, knowing all the different ways that we go about the business of being human.
So when you were writing the book, so in the Hillsdale plan, the program guide, our students engage with your book, and there's also there's a student workbook. There's also a teacher's guide. They encounter it in 7th grade, 8th grade, 11th grade.
Great.
Did you, and of course they've gotten a pretty heavy dose of American history as in kindergarten and 1st grade at an appropriate level there. So it spirals on itself, and they get to encounter the names, the places, the concepts, the ideas several times through their K-12 experience. I'm wondering, when you were writing the book, did you have that in mind? Did you know kind of the age or the where students would intersect with this thing?
I didn't. Yeah. And as you were formulating the question, I was thinking to myself how grateful I am for the people like Katie O'Toole and others along. John McBride, who was my collaborator on the teacher's guide and the student workbook, is a man I knew in Chattanooga who was a master teacher, just one of the greats. And he was very badly treated by the local hoity-toity private school, which I won't name, but he was basically eased out there because he was not teaching woke history.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple. We didn't have the word woke yet
Mm-hmm.
for it, but and so I just have tried. John's retired now, but I try to keep alive his verve, and a lot of what's great about the Teacher's Guide is John. It's not me, but other than him, and he read the book. I did get, when I wrote the book, I didn't think of any follow-on stuff. I knew that we would probably need to have some kind of apparatus, some sort of additional
guide
materials.
or something. Yeah.
Yes, but I didn't know whether I'd be writing it, and when I suggested it to Roger, he said, "Oh, we don't do that. We don't do that. This is." I guess he thought this was like Henry Adams writing his history of the United States or something. Anyway, it so happened that I think I have this right. His wife, Alexandra, was reading Land of Hope in a reading group where they live in Connecticut. And there were a bunch of teachers in the group. And they said, "Oh, we love this, but I wouldn't know how to use this in the classroom." So Alexandra sort of marches back and says, this is what I'm hearing is you need ancillary materials.
Mm-hmm.
And so Roger said, "Oh, we're going to need ancillary materials, and we need them now." So we had to do everything. We were kind of hand to mouth in understanding how American education works and how there are ways in which the system should be challenged frontally and relentlessly. But there are also ways that it needs to be worked with. There are things that exist, even bureaucratic standards that make some sense, and you're just not going to get people to adopt your book if you don't do certain things.
Yeah.
So we have really accommodated a lot of that in this forthcoming second edition of Land of Hope. I think people will be. It's definitely a dazzling book. I mean, we're about 3/4 of the way through the page layout, and I think we'll have the book out at least in PDF form that we can share with teachers by March.
Yeah.
And bound books by April, which is a little late, but we've been pedaling as hard as we can to get there.
Well, yeah,
I think they're going to like it. I think they're going to love it, and we've got more images, we've got maps galore. I think there are 4 times as many maps, and they're very specific maps. I mean, we have maps. We have a map of George Whitfield's journeys, evangelical journeys up and down the eastern seaboard.
Mm-hmm.
We have very specific maps, and we could have done more. I was worried about the book getting too long.
Yeah.
So I think we have a glossary, we have timelines, we have sidebars, we have primary sources that are sort of woven into the text. It's in some ways more like the kind of textbook you're used to, which
mm-hmm.
I will admit to you, when I wrote Land of Hope 1, I was actively rebelling against that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want a book to be read.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want sidebars. I don't want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want footnotes. Most books of them don't have footnotes. But
kind of a razor's edge there between being distracting and and just being a great story.
I wanted it to be all about the prose.
Yeah.
The few illustrations. I wanted more maps than we were able to get. We had a very tight budget.
Yeah.
And if you will look at the book with this in mind, you'll see that there were really only 2 or 3 maps that we had a cartographer draw.
Mm-hmm. The
rest of them are public domain maps, which are wonderful.
Yeah.
We've kept them in the
neat.
new edition because that's so color and sense of time and place that they bring, and they're perfectly good. The maps of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. From the time period.
Yeah.
But we did that initially strictly for money reasons.
Yeah, because they're
and we
available.
didn't have to this
Yeah.
time. So I think that plus I have to mention we have, and teachers will want to know this, we have developed an online curriculum to go with the book.
Yeah,
That's pretty much done.
great.
But we're not going to release it until we release the book.
Yeah,
But it's
well, that's a great way to supplement it.
it does, and we have, for example, things like, once I got a couple of complaints. I'm really, literally, you could count them on the fingers of one hand, but from people who wished I had done more with pre-Columbian civilizations, and I say in the book, my rationale is for only doing a little bit, that they're not really part of the American story, and but we have a whole bunch of pre-Columbian stuff, including maps of Mexican cities, and
Well, that's maybe an opportunity for another book another day.
maybe, but it's also something that teachers can draw on as they wish.
Yeah.
They can download it. They can direct their students to it, and we have John McBride's been in on this, and he when he taught, he would use music, and to some extent art, but especially music.
Yeah.
And that's a whole way of approaching American history. That the songs of the Spanish-American War. There were songs of the Spanish-American War. The cowboy songs. The songs of the Revolution.
Optimally, our curriculum does that, is intended to,
Yeah.
incorporate the art and the music from an era as we teach that era.
Yeah.
And I think we achieve that reasonably well. Dr. McClay, I wanted to ask you, some of the audience will be parents who, like I was 15 years ago, have young kids and are evaluating options for their kids and thinking about education. I wonder if you could talk about, in Georgia, for example, for most people in Georgia, their children may very well never encounter a course with the word history in the title. It'll be social studies of some form or another. What is going on there? What have we lost, and what should a parent know about that in terms of, looking forward to their kids' education?
Yes, you could tell my bodily social studies. I can't even say it without having a breath between the two.
Yeah.
Well, social studies are an expression of the sort of idea of social science, and that history can be reduced to a kind of science instead of being really ultimately more about stories. And stories, people hear stories like tall tales. They think to say history is stories, it's all made up. No. My talk today to the group was at the title, History as a Way of Knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing, not just speaking, but knowing. There are some things, and you think about if you ask somebody, Joe Schmo, what's he like? And then you might say, what's his story? And when you say not what's his story, actually, a lot of times it means not just where was he born, where did blah, 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 but tell me why Joe Schmo is the way he is. Whether Joe Schmo won the Medal of Honor, or Joe Schmo is a mass murderer, or Joe Schmo, what's his story?
Mm-hmm.
We don't sort of compile a fact sheet.
Mm-hmm.
We want to link those facts together in a meaningful way to say what Joe Schmo's story is.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things I worry about is that we're all worried about AI, but I don't think there's any doubt that whatever in education grounded in AI brings us is not going to be good. The question is whether it's going to drive everything else out.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that so many schools around this country have abandoned reading from books to reading on screens, tablets, and there's no good reason to do this except that it's cheaper. That's not necessarily a good reason.
That's right.
Maybe a defensible reason, but not a good one. So I have the same fear that history is going to, undergo this same sort of fate, that it doesn't have a sort of payoff in terms of preparing people for the job market or other sorts of vocational goals. And you're not old enough, but I am old enough to remember when the personal handheld calculators came in, and there was a panic about that. Well, people will not learn how to add and subtract anymore. And they don't. I mean, they actually, younger people, have very bad estimating skills. My mother was a mathematician. She was very tuned into this. She said, no, look, you can, if you need to make an elaborate calculation, of course use a calculator. But most things, it's much more useful to be, she'd like casting out nines and all these gimmicks that people use to estimate. And estimation is a skill. Look, I'm not saying AI can't get to that, but I certainly see this with young people. They don't have an ability to sort of check their work, so to speak, against estimated totals. I think something like this may happen to history, or may be threatened. That social studies has already done a lot of damage by taking the idea that history is not a set of stories and of things that only happen once. I'm of the school of thought that not only does history not repeat itself, it doesn't really ever rhyme. Mm-hmm. Or you may think you hear a rhyme, but it's like one of Bob Dylan's rhymes, where home rhymes with bone.
Right.
It's not really a rhyme at all. So history is the science of irreproducible events and incommensurable things.
Yeah.
So it's not a science at all, but it's a way that we have to learn to think in this world and think clearly about the human person, what it means to be human. So I'm a little worried about, I think we need to start to fight back about retaining the idea of history and junking social studies.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's part of what we're doing in this national movement.
It is. It's a little ambiguous, and maybe I could ask you to talk about this. I mean, a little ambiguous within classical education, because history is not a classical, trivium quadrivium discipline.
Right.
It's a modern edition.
Yeah.
But I think it's one that, explained and understood correctly, is indispensable, because it's a sort of a discipline of memory.
Well, I mean, frankly, the entire this big giant program guide that Hillsdale has developed, I mean, the history is the skeleton on which the whole thing is built, and perhaps for obvious reasons related to just chronology, that's sort of how we organize. So it's a funny thing, because part of what classical education is about is the permanent things, as Russell Kirk said. Mm-hmm. But it's also about, C.S. Lewis is wiser even than Russell Kirk in this regard. That C.S. Lewis has, and I forget which of his essays it is, but he talks about how you can be led astray by this sort of idea of universal character of man, and think that a medieval knight, if you stripped him of all of his armor, it's just the same as an 18th century bourgeois or a Greek slave or Greek citizen in antiquity or whatever. That history, time, and fortune happeneth to us all, and that there is a way that part of what we are is how we adapt to the circumstances in which we find ourselves, which is why it's hard to compare greatness in a political leader in different time periods, because to be a great leader it's not an abstract skill; it's a concrete skill. Mm-hmm. It's one. How do you, how the way you run General Foods is going to be different than the way you run a network of classical schools. That's right.
in the 21st century. You know, both need leadership, and I'm thankful you're where you are, and not the head of General Foods.
Right.
And vice versa. You know.
Well, so there are timeless principles and elements of humanity that apply across time, but you're saying that we're also a product of our time.
Yes,
simultaneously.
and there's some way in which working out the balance between the two, which I think ultimately does mean that honoring what's enduring and eternal in us is essential to find our way through the circumstances of the time.
You know, I have a son. I know you have a son, and one of the things, and I'm sure this is true for the ladies as well, but it seems to kind of jump out at me more in my relationship with him is, young men are eager to figure out who they are in the world, and are looking for a story to tell about themselves, and it seems important to all of us to kind of have some sense of how we fit into the what happened on planet Earth before we got here, and therefore what's kind of shaped us. So I don't know. I see history as playing an important role in that. I mean, we want to graduate young men and women who walk across the stage and understand the context of things and have developed a vision for their life that is largely based on some heroes and some things that have happened that are worthy of their affection. So I
agree with that 1,000%. I'm being unmathematical here. My mother would be very unhappy.
She correct you on that?
She said, don't ever say that. But we're nothing. We are not human if the aspirational is not part of our makeup.
Yeah.
If we're simply a matter of reacting to what impinges upon us, we're the resultant effect of other forces. No, we are free. And we're free to succeed. We're free to fail. We're free to, as we say, to make something of ourselves. Isn't that a wonderful feature of Commons made? We're to make something of ourselves that we aren't unless the effort is there. And Aristotle presents this: the virtue is not something you just have; it is something you both have and achieve. Both things are involved in it.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm struggling with, and I'm not really, it's one of the things I feel strongly about doing, is that we've gone through this whole period in the study of American history in which the emphasis has been on our national failings and our national sins with regard to race, with regard to the, the treatment of the native population is a corollary to that. But in other things that we could name, we could spend a long time. Most history interviews would consist exclusively of that.
Right.
And I think a lot of that criticism is valid, but there's a distinction in the law between things that are probative and things that are dispositive. And I do not think they're dispositive about what America is about. I think what we need, and what I tried to do in Land of Hope is to say, yes, it really is a shame that we couldn't have incorporated into the Constitution the abolition of slavery. But hear me out, people. This is why it wasn't possible.
That's right.
You can't just snap your fingers and say that a desirable moral change is going to occur because you will it. I'm afraid we have a lot of people, young people now, who do think that.
Right.
Who think, and that's part of the woke mentality, I think.
Yeah.
And there's an impatience with the flawed character of human beings. So that, the fact that George Washington owned slaves that's it.
Right.
Off with his
nothing
head.
Else to admire.
Nothing else to be said. Jefferson, who, actually, there's a wonderful quotation from John Lewis, a local hero here.
That's right.
The civil rights movement, who was asked about this. He says, look, we all knew about that aspect of Jefferson, but what mattered to us was that the things he wrote, and not only the Declaration, but the Declaration, they were a fountain of inspiration for us. If he can say that, why on earth can some dinky graduate student not say it too?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
This is the man who suffered injury at the hands of those who opposed his cause. But anyway, I think finding a balance where we acknowledge our faults, we don't have to have plaster of Paris saints because they don't hold up.
Right.
In a rainstorm, they're gone.
Right.
We don't have to have plaster of Paris saints, but we do have to understand what a real hero is. And every now and then, I hear somebody talk about, my dad. I grew up in the coal mining district near Pittsburgh, and my dad, went off to work every day at some ungodly early hour and came back at some ungodly late hour and did it, 6 days a week, and suffered black lung and all, whatever. But my dad was my hero because that's understanding. Dad may have been drink too much. He may have been had all kinds of faults, but to understand what a hero is, that the hero is somebody who can make the aspirational dominant over the merely conditional in life, who is willing to pay the price for doing that, just as a soldier is willing to pay the price, the aspirational price, the sacrifice of his life for that aspirational purpose, and any number of other things. There are you're right. I was moved when you were talking about having sons, and I know there were points in my sons growing up, and as there was in my own, where I kind of realized that there was something between where I was and where I wanted to be in order to be able to affirm that I was really a man, and not in this sort of idiotic sense of that word that we use in our discourse. It was something everybody knew what it meant to be a man, to feel like a man. And look, I'm even willing to, for some women, that it would apply, and I know some very gutsy women who have done enormous good in the world. But it's a particular burden for a guy, know, and I think we've had an emphasis in our society for most of my life in how difficult it is to be a woman. That women have there's an obvious biological role that women have played, and we're now in an era in which that's sort of optional, and women have and are right to have or entitled to have other kinds of aspirations, and we're trying. We've been trying to figure out how can they have it all. And,
right.
That's meanwhile, the whole question of manhood has been left unaddressed, and now we have a whole generation of boys who don't know what the hell they are.
Sure.
And they're not even sure that they're boys.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not trying to deliver an oversimple diagnosis of the causes of gender dysphoria, but I think I'm happy to see that Abigail Schreier and others who have written about girls are also writing about boys. Christina Hoff Sommers, a number of very good female authors have said, whoa, we've got a problem with boys. The whole institutional structure of education favors girls. Yeah. And and I could go on about that, but it is this. It isn't the main thing we do in the classroom, but it is not unrelated to it. And one of the things that the study of history does teach is it's astonishing to see the way that a young man with a dissolute, worthless life can rise to the challenge of doing something truly noble, and it can transform him. and one example that comes to mind, and a story that's always moved me, was Ulysses Grant, who had a very undistinguished military career. Probably was bounced for drinking, but he finished very low in his class at West Point. And at the time the Civil War broke out, he was working for his father in Galena, Illinois, or someplace that out in the sticks. And the war presented him, and there were a number of things that had to happen, but it presented him with an opportunity to become one of the great generals of human history. And he wrote a magnificent memoir that everyone should read. I think it's one of the unsung great works of American literature. And yet he would have been a skinhead or some kind of guy with tattoos all up and down if he had lived in our times.
Yeah.
He would have been a good for nothing. But his times gave him the opportunity to become the man that he potentially was.
And he did. Yeah.
But you couldn't separate that from his story, from his biography, from his history. It's interesting how many, just on military side, how many of our great military figures had these sort of calamitous early events. You had Nimitz in the Navy, the great admiral of the Second World War. You have Churchill's early career.
In modern times, you have John McCain, who was the anchor man at the Naval Academy, and had a pretty decent military and life, public life. So.
Well, John McCain's an interesting case because he had a really hard road I don't know how much of this story I actually ought to tell, but I worked for the Navy for a while, for the Naval Institute as an editor, and in the 70s, and he was. There were a lot of people in the Navy who really didn't care for him, to put it mildly. And
an admiral's son, right?
Admiral's son, a nephew of an admiral, a grandson of an admiral, his wife, his mother, Roberta. I met his mother once. It was when McCain. I went to an occasion in Washington when McCain was running for president in 2000, and it may shock you to know people didn't know what his foreign policy views were at that time. He had never really been outspoken, so this was going to be his big foreign policy campaign speech. So I managed to get a seat there. I got there late. The only seat that was available, it was we're about 20 rounds in the room. It was a dinner. Was next to Roberta, Roberta McCain, and the mother of John McCain, and she was a battleship in human form.
Really? Nothing subtle about her? Is that what you're saying?
No, and terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't think any man I've ever met has been more terrifying in the sort of sense of command that she had.
Yeah.
And so I sat down next to her and I tried to make conversation, and everything I said, her response was sort of, with not saying it, but sort of, would you just please stop trying to engage me? I'm not interested in anything about you.
Yeah.
But I kept trying. I wanted, just at least, not have her think of me as some, nothing. And so I finally I said, you must be very proud of him, that his experiences in captivity, his and now serving the United States Senate, running for president, and she looked at me, and that was a little flicker of humanity. Maybe it might have been one of those 16-pounder guns firing, and she said, "Yes, but he'll never have the main thing."
Interesting.
And it was interesting. I mean, it's clear what the main thing was. That was making admiral.
Yeah.
He'll never make admiral. He barely made captain.
Yeah.
And he also actually his strictly military career was this people never tired of pointing this out. It was undistinguished. He crashed planes. He was lucky to be alive.
He was.
And yet, and whatever, a lot of people still don't like him. But even though they still don't like him. But you're right to point them as an example. Somebody who, and in some ways he overcame, was a privileged upbringing. He went to, I think St. Albans, the exclusive schools in Washington, and managed to get thrown out.
Yeah.
He got thrown out of schools left and right. He was a hellion.
Yeah.
But after I met his mother, I had a whole different view.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
him.
I thought,
that's man, do you ever have a mountain to climb?
We shouldn't judge the book by its cover. There, everybody's got their story.
I think she's no longer alive, so I feel safe.
All right, you've got to catch.
Otherwise, she might come after me with those eyes.
You've got to catch an airplane, so we'll finish here with just maybe some short answers. I've got a series of shorter questions that I'll try to get through here.
Yeah. You're going to edit this, right?
We'll see. I don't know.
All right.
I think it's great conversation. You're sharing some awesome stuff with us. Okay, you're on the U.S. Commission for the Semi-Quin Centennial Celebration.
Good pronunciation.
Was I close?
I think you get some credit for that.
It's probably one of the longer words that I know. But what do you
anti-disestablishmentarianism?
Yeah, that's always the favorite. What do you hope will come of the celebration? What is kind of the best thing that could occur?
Well,
for the
look,
country?
I think one of the things that's happened. This is hard to give a short answer.
Yeah,
to.
Fair enough. That's fair.
The commission started off was chaotic for a long time because it was first of all the first Trump administration, where everything was, whatever it is, we're against
controversial.
Everything was controversial, and we didn't get anything done, and we didn't even get an executive director hired, and the Biden administration was not much better. But then, I've been on this thing for a long time, and then after the 2024 election, things started to happen, and we were already doing it. I have to give credit, and this is a very hopeful thing. There's a woman named Rosie Rios who is the chairman. We still don't have an executive director, but she's the chairman of the commission, and she's been effectively our leader. She's a liberal Democrat from California. I believe she served on the state Democratic committee. She was the treasurer of the United States under Obama. So she's very much a partisan Democrat. But she has put her partisanship aside to do what's best for the country. And I'm full of admiration for her in this regard. And I think many of us, on both sides of the aisle have adopted that spirit. So we're getting a lot of smaller things done, sort of community demonstration tours, school contests, things like that we're sponsoring. I think there's more coming that will be bigger. I can't really talk about, but and bringing the World Cup to Atlanta is something we actually had a role in.
Great.
But because we're going to make that a 250th thing.
Right.
But what's happened is more gratifying, to me, is that this sport of fear that Tocqueville describes in his great book on democracy in America, that people are voluntarily sort of rising up in their localities, saying, well, here in Pottersville, or whatever, Shaker Falls, we ought to do something.
Yeah.
Let's open up the local museum, or let's have a ceremony, whatever, a parade. So we're starting to see lots of things popping up all over the place, and that local initiative. I think this is so great. Much better than a nationally coordinated thing. We try to serve as a clearinghouse, and when people come to us and say, "This is what we want to do," we say, "Okay, what you want to do is go to the head of the Iowa committee. We have the names and we have the contact information, and that can help people to get resources." So we haven't been heavily funded, to put it mildly, but we've done a lot with what we have.
Yeah.
And I think in the end it's going to be a success. And I'm old enough to remember the bicentennial 50 years ago.
Yep.
And it was a near disaster.
Well, yeah, I remember. I was a boy. I remember a little
It was
neighborhood
a near
celebration.
disaster. Well, I was very young, but I just graduated from college, and those of your listeners who are probably the majority of whom would
probably not
actually
there.
remember it, but it was, of course, the big defining episode was the tall ships. This procession of old sailing ships from the 19th century that from countries all over the world. Uruguay had a the European countries, they all represented, and they processed up through New York Harbor, up the Hudson at a certain distance, and they had sort of turned around and they went up to Boston, and there were I forget the number. I think there were 8 million people lining New York Harbor to watch, and that's like the population of the whole city.
Right.
I was not there, but I watched it on television along with umpteen million other people. It was a whole issue of Life magazine, which many of your audience will never don't. Life magazine, which was the great pictorial magazine.
That's right. Yeah.
Of that time, and the pictures of these ships were just enormous. Why was that so effective? I have never quite been able to figure it out, except to say, and this is a classical educator in me, I think people were, this was a terrible time. We'd lost the Vietnam War. We had Watergate. We had the Soviet Union was still going strong, making strides all over the place in Africa, particularly Angola. We were just a few years away from the Afghanistan invasion by the Soviets. We were back on our heels. In the United Nations, we were being attacked. Israel was being attacked. Zionism was racism. It was a terrible time. And so the mood was people thought, how are we going to celebrate the bicentennial at a time like this? Exactly what people thought coming into our celebration.
That's right. Interesting. Yeah.
And what I think the ships turned it around, because the ships were something beautiful and noble and in a way disinterested, which is a word that we don't use much anymore in its proper meaning.
Maybe got our eyes off
it
right here and now.
Yeah. And it lifted people. And the fact that it had nothing to do with whether the Vietnam War was good or bad, whether was actually very good. It took people's minds away from issues and brought them to a consideration. We live in a world full of beauty, full of worthy things to aspire to, things that cause you to feel awe, to have a catch in your throat. And I think that's why it worked.
Yeah.
I gave a few speeches at the commission along these lines, and nobody was buying it. So we're not going to have that. I wanted to do something with trains, because I think trains have a romantic place in the American heart. But
I sure like the ships.
The ships were great. The ships were great. But anyway, I expect something. I also, I'm leaving one major thing out of the equation, and that is the White House. And the White House has made it very clear that this is going to be a
huge.
Big party.
Huge.
It's huge, huge party. And
the biggest one ever.
The biggest ever in the universe.
That's right.
No other planet has done this. So it will be big. And I know of some of the things that are going on. Here's what I'm involved with, being the nerd that I am, is that I think we're going to come out of this by July 5th of this year with a real sense of having done it right. I believe we will. Wouldn't that have said this a year ago?
Yeah.
And what I wanted to see happen is that we don't make the mistake we made with the bicentennial, which was the bicentennial was an up thing. And the moment it was over, the air came out of the balloon and everything settled back. I want this to go on, not as a big, huge party, but as public education. And again, I don't mean this in a dry, sit at your desks and do your work sense. I mean in the sense that growing appreciation of, and I want it to continue all the way through to 2041, which is the 250th of the Bill of Rights, the adoption of the Bill of Rights. So I see the creation of our system begins in the Declaration in 76. Actually begins even earlier, but we're beginning it in 1776, and it runs through 1791. And as important as the Declaration was, as I say in my book, declaring was the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
And the war that was fought, we're going to relive that in minute detail for years to come, I hope. And then the Constitution, the problems of the Articles of Confederation, why we came up with the Constitution we did, why we have all these separations of powers that everybody is now finding fault with, why we had the Electoral College, why these things were done, a reappropriation of that knowledge.
Yeah.
And frankly, look, also a reexamination of, well, was that a response to a time that's different than the time we have now? Do we need to amend the Constitution? I very much disagree with the book that Jill Lepore has just published about how we need to open things up and radically revise the Constitution. But I think she's right that we've made it too difficult. It was meant to be abandoned, and much of the problem with the living Constitution is it's a way getting around the amendment process.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make amending the Constitution better, and I don't necessarily mean easier, but it could be easier. Anyway, that's my goal: is that we have a whole block of time, going up through the Constitutional Convention and the first Congress, the first presidential administration, and the adoption of the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Then I think the basic structure is complete.
Yeah.
Not that it doesn't change a lot in the years to come, but then I think we can call off we can do something else.
Yeah.
But my goal would be to continue this as a
celebration.
As a celebration and a time for reappropriating what's ours, remembering who we are.
Very well said. Well, Dr. McClay, I want to thank you for doing this talk with me. I think you've obviously been a great influence to your family and to the hundreds, probably thousands of students you've taught. But, through this book, you are having a great impact on thousands and thousands of kids, a ripple effect that will last for a very long time. So I hope you know that.
I do, and there are times when I am humbled by it and a little bit kind of, what? Me?
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that other people who feel called to things, and I really did, about halfway through, I kind of felt, I think this is what a calling feels like.
Well, look, we're tangentially involved with the same movement here. We're part of your membership. We're a member school with Hillsdale and teaching the book and trying to perpetuate many of the concepts and things you've talked about.
It's a very positive movement. I hope people realize that what we really want to do is restore. We're not, and it's like, we want to restore something very good.
That's right.
That I think we've mistakenly, maybe in some cases intentionally, but in some other cases inadvertently, allowed to atrophy, and we want to restore those things.
That's right.
And restore the kind of human character that's made possible by the regime we used to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm going to break us here. Okay. Friends, thanks for watching the show with us today. Again, I'm Matthew Kirby, CEO of Liberty Classical Schools. Love for you to read more about us at libertyclassicalschools.org. We will also post Dr. McClay's, a link to his biography and his CV, which is about 6 pages long and incredibly impressive. So continue to learn about him. And thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dr.
Thank
McClay.
you.
It's awesome.